Hi guys, it's JT2 As some of you may remember, I started a new program this year for students 18 to 21 since I graduated high school this past year. It's called JT2, an acronym for Job Transitioning To. There's a 2 at the end because I was part of a class in my upper years of high school known as JT1, where we did some of the same things we do in JT2. In my first year of JT2, we had 4 managers, including 1 coordinator, 18 job coaches, and 33 job interns, including 11 that were graduating this year. In this program, we start off each day in our job training rooms at one of the high schools in our district, where we learn about things we should know for when we start a job. We went on a rotation in 3 different groups to different rooms, divided by each third of the year, where one of our managers taught us a different set of job skills. In my first job training room for the year, our teacher taught us financial knowledge. It was a lot of things I've already learned before, but it was useful to get refreshed. After a little while, a bus picked us up to go to our job site. There are a variety of different job sites we go to, but for most of them, only 2 or 3 interns and a job coach go to one at a time. We each had a schedule of what job site we went to on each day of the week, and it switches once the second semester of the school year begins. We followed the same schedule of arrival and dismissal, as well as days off and half days, as the high school we were headquartered at and their district. I first got an idea of JT2 during the summer of 2024. Every summer, I go to an ESY program, which is an acronym for Extended School Year. Since I graduated from high school in 2024, I already started going to job sites that summer for a shorter period. The ones I went to were 3 Goodwills that were near us. I started the real JT2 year in September. On the first day, our whole program gathered in the auditorium, and our staff introduced themselves to us before giving an overview of what our program is all about. In the afternoon, another one of my interns and I helped to do a job in the school's nurse's office. The next week was our first full week, and our first week going to job sites. Since I was new to the program, I went to the same job site for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which was one of the Goodwills I went to during the summer. Tuesdays, I'd go to the second floor workshop of our local college, and on Thursdays, I go to a nearby church. I'm going to go over those 3 job sites. On Mondays at Goodwill, we mainly look for clothes with whatever color tag we were pulling that week. They would go in these boxes in the employees section and eventually get shipped to their last resort, which is a place I'm going to talk about later. On Fridays, we would make everything inside the place look nice, and sometimes stock things from the racks onto the shelves. On Wednesdays, we do a little bit of both. I went with a different fellow intern on each of the days. On Wednesdays, the one I went with was someone who I already got along with, named Sean. He told me his favorite memory of this year was picking out a movie with me for him to buy at Goodwill. On that day of the week in particular, we'd also sometimes stop at a pizza place or a bagel place nearby, and we've even eaten at the 2 places before. The second floor workshop at our local college, where I went to on Tuesdays at the time, was ran by one of our managers and 2 of our job coaches, including one that stayed there all day, whom I also knew before outside of JT2, because we live in a small world. Unlike most of the other job sites, where there would only be 2 or 3 interns, at the second floor workshop, there'd be about 5 or 6 of us each day. At that place, there was a print shop, and we learned how to do jobs with the printer, where we sometimes got to use our imagination. We had various other jobs at that place, such as folding shirts, data entry, vacuuming the floor, counting paper reams, and more. We'd also have music playing in the background on the screen projector, which was something I liked about the job site. Another benefit was how we had the option to order lunch from the college's cafeteria if we brought money, and I usually did that when I went there. And then there's a local church I'd go to on Thursdays. The cool thing about that one was that I already went to that job site before when I was in my junior year of high school in our JT1 class, where we'd go out every 4 days. At this job site, the only thing we basically did was clean the place in different ways. It may not sound like much, but I liked the atmosphere of the church. It had 2 floors, and on the second floor, there were different rooms that made it kind of look like a house. And there was a sizable service room downstairs. One benefit to this job site was how we had an extensive break time. This allowed me to work on the project for a YouTube video I uploaded in November 2024. One thing that was fun about JT2 was how we had a trip we went on once every month. On September 20th, we went to the zoo for our first trip of the year. The thing I remember most about this trip was a mistake I did that made for a good story. Since it was my first month at JT2, I was still getting familiar with everyone's faces. So at one point, I walked away from the job coach I was with and started walking with a different one that I confused for her, since they both have blonde hair. I eventually realized my mistake, and I needed someone to guide me back to the job coach I was supposed to be with. I got her scared because she didn't know where I was. But now I make jokes about it, and they get a kick out of it. Our next trip was on October 11th, when we went to a national park near us. There was a trail we walked through in the woods there. This led us to a basketball court where we made some shots at, and we actually brought our own balls to the park. We also put on music to dance to before we left. November was the month I had my first change of a job site. Instead of going to the church on Thursdays, I started going to the cafeteria of the college I already went to every Tuesday. The main thing we did at that job site was clean the tables. Sometimes we'd go down the elevator to take out trash bags. Overall, it was a lot of just sitting at the tables. Remember the food from the cafeteria I was talking about earlier? Well, you could get it for free if you're working there, and that was a bonus. And there were also 2 arcade machines in front of us that I tried playing at before. As for our November trip, which we did on the 13th, we went to a shopping center. While I was there, I bought a Flyer sweatshirt, since I didn't have anything for that team at the time. We tried to buy one at Rally House, but because they had outrageous prices, I bought one at Target instead, where I could at least buy one for $50. On December 6th, we took a trip to a mall that's a little bit out of the way. I like going to a shopping mall that wasn't the one I usually went to. It had some of the same stores, but the place looked very different. When I was there, I bought a candle for both of my parents to give to them for Christmas. I also got an Eagles mug for my mom and my stepdad to share. We also went on a shorter trip that only certain interns went to on December 20th, the day before our winter break, and it was called Blue Light. This was a music place where we got to experiment with instruments while they played music in the background. The people there even allowed me to play 2 of my songs. Unfortunately, I had a rough afternoon that day due to a sensory meltdown I had, as I had mentioned in another video, but it doesn't take away from the experience I had beforehand. This was probably the harshest experience I had in my first year at JT2, but I got through it and I've been through a lot worse. By the way, December had the first time of the year my group switched from one room to another, and this backtracks to the 9th. In this room, we were learning about things such as job exploration and how to manage your emotions. They also taught us about things like other work programs to do after JT2 and how to get transportation for those of us who don't drive. I also had another change at my Thursday job site in December. The cafeteria of our college temporarily closed because it was on winter break. So I was going to the other 2 Goodwills. The one I went to on each Thursday varied depending on which interns attended. One of them was a lot different from the other 2. This was where things would get shipped to from the Goodwill I usually went to if they didn't sell. Our job at that place was to put things that didn't sell into boxes, sorted by different categories. We'd have these bins with the stuff in it that we were supposed to put away. In January, all of us started a full new rotation of job sites for the second semester towards the end of the month. The one job site I continued to work at was the second floor workshop at the college, because I felt this was a good place for me to keep working at, and I liked working there. The only difference is, I started going there on Mondays instead of Tuesdays. Overall, I'd say that the workshop has taught me a good bit of skills that'll be useful for me when I have a real job. As for Tuesdays, and same goes for Thursdays in the second semester, I started going back to my old high school that I just graduated from, and we'd have jobs to do there, in the library, and sometimes other rooms like the nurse's office. It was kind of weird going back the first time, but started to feel normal pretty quickly. This is Dre from the future. In case you were wondering, there were a lot of people who saw me that I used to know at Highland and were surprised to see my return. While the school had their lunch, we'd go to the auditorium and have a snack cart, where any student having their lunch in the auditorium could make a purchase. Then we'd have our lunch in the faculty lounge. On Wednesdays, I started going to a tuxedo place. We do a variety of things there, such as testing out the bolts, cleaning the restrooms, sorting the suspenders by color, and taking the trash out. My favorite thing about the place was how their vacuum cleaner had a thing you could detach to it that would suck up any small thing it comes in contact with. It was a fun thing to clean the floor with. A bonus thing we had next to the place was Dunkin' Donuts and a Starbucks. Sometimes I would order a drink from either place to go with my lunch. And I even got my lunch from Dunkin' Donuts a couple times. And also, because the bus got us an hour later for that job site, I was part of the group of interns on that day that would walk around the school or on the track outside when the weather was nice, or we go to the cardio room before our bus picks us up. On Fridays, I started going to a grocery store around us known as the Grocery Outlet Bargain Market. The main thing we did at that place was stock the shelves. This required us to use our brains, and sometimes we had to make room by moving stuff around. If we completely run out of room, we'd put the remaining items at the top of the aisle. If we had nothing else to stock, we'd just make sure everything on the shelves looked nice. It was somewhat reminiscent of working at Goodwill, except I was at a grocery store instead of a thrift shop. I also did an after-school activity for the first time in January, which our program would participate in. We did it every 2 months, but I didn't go to the one in November. It's called Power Hour. In this activity, we spent an hour in the classroom interacting with our fellow interns by playing different games with them. We would also take turns to pick a karaoke song to play on the projector that we could sing to. Now let's talk about the trip we went on in January. Like when I was in high school, we went on a bowling trip at some point every year to the same bowling alley. That's always a trip I enjoy. In February, the trip we went on was suggested by one of our job coaches. We went to a room where we were given steps by an instructor for an art project. We all ended up drawing 5 clovers. Then we got to paint our picture. This is what I came up with. I got the idea to design all my clovers based on my home city, Philadelphia's sports teams. And then in March, we went to a farmer's market. It was one that I used to go to all the time when I was a kid. The group I was in didn't do much there except walk around in circles. But something we did on all 3 of those trips was go to our local mall afterwards and eat at the food court for lunch. All 3 times, I got a cheesesteak from the cheesesteak place. March was also the month we changed to our last rotation of what room we were in. In that room, we were talking about things such as how to solve problems and how to identify what career would be best for us. At one point, we did a career fair project where we picked a career and did a slideshow that went over it. My favorite thing I learned in that room was when we were talking about the sizes of problems, and they categorized annoyances before small, medium, and big problems. This brought a new perspective to me on things that are simply annoying and not a real problem. Another thing that changed in March is that we started doing something different at Highland when I'd go there as a job site. We'd help maintenance out by cleaning all the windows and door handles. And if we had time, we'd wipe down the lockers as well. It may sound boring to do the same thing every time I went there, but fortunately, I liked the people I was working with, so I would talk with them as we were working around the building. And we still did the snack cart thing in the middle of the day. The trip we went on in April was to the planetarium on the 17th. The one we went to was an a tented room at another college that's not far from us. They showed us all the different stars and constellations in the night sky before we got to see a space show. Remember Pluto. 1930 to 2006, we'll never forget. After the show, we walked around the college campus. For lunch, I ate at a restaurant I'd never eaten at before, known as Chickies and Pete's. I got a breaded chicken sandwich from there, and my table got crab fries for us all to share. I also had a change in my Wednesday job site, which I first started working at on April 30th. Another one of my fellow interns and I switched job sites between this one and the tuxedo place, because we both had a difficult time at our prospective job sites on the same day 4 weeks prior. And we both talked to our coordinator about it. It was the same fellow intern that I helped in the nurse's office on the first day of JT2. So I started working at a small pizza place right around the corner from our hub at the high school. At that place, we'd use a rag to wipe things down, stock the refrigerators, then the last thing we would do was something that I learned to do for the first time when I first worked there: folding the pizza boxes. This is Dre from the future. I just want to say that the bottom of the counter was looking real filthy, but don't worry, we got that taken care of. And also, we got free pizza for lunch there. I thought their pizza was really good. Kind of tastes like the one you would get on the boardwalk. And I tried various different toppings throughout the weeks I worked there. And that was the final change in job sites I had. They stayed the way they were for the rest of the year. May 9th was the day our program had the field day. The students from the 3 different high schools also joined us, and we participated in different activities. The students participated in the ones they chose. My favorite part was when we competed in musical chairs. It got intense. I was only the 3rd to be eliminated, but it was still fun to watch from the bleachers. Then we had barbecue food and water ice inside the cafeteria. We planned on a trip to Ocean City on May 30th, but they were expecting rain for that day, so instead we went to our local mall again. While we were there, I bought a t-shirt for another one of my sports teams. This time, it was one for the Phillies. Then we got to June, where we had something that we referred to as a week of fun, on the week from the 9th to the 13th. We went on a different trip each day of the week, except for Monday. The Friday before, on the 6th, we already had a trip to the same park we went to on October 11th. Then Monday the 9th was our last day of job sites. I went to the second floor workshop one more time, but we didn't do much there. We put movies on while we were there. On Tuesday the 10th, we took a trip to the zoo, but a different one from the one we went to in September. My favorite part was when we got to see a lion and a tiger from close up. We even got to see another tiger walking above us. By the way, we got rained on a lot while we were there, but that made it a new kind of experience, since I'd never been to the zoo in the rain before. For lunch, we ate inside a tented area, and they had barbecue food for us. On Wednesday the 11th, we went somewhere called the Pop Shop, which is a place to eat at, where I've been to twice before, including one of the trips we went on in my senior year of high school. They also had an ice cream bar for us after we ate. We walked around the street before it was time for us to eat there, and they had different places to shop at. On Thursday the 12th, we went to the arcade at our local mall. We could only play certain games with the card we had, but we enjoyed playing the ones that were available for us. For example, I played Dance Dance Revolution and a Shooting Zombies game with my friend Sean. We also had pizza and wings for lunch, and then we went bowling at the arcade before leaving. And then on Friday the 13th, we luckily didn't cross paths with any black cats or walk under any ladders because we had a nice day. This was our special day for those who were graduating. We went to a nice place for it where we had a good breakfast. Before that, they called all the graduates' names while they sat in these chairs, and all their families were sitting at the tables, and all of us who weren't graduating had our own tables. Then we had our slideshow with all the graduating interns one by one. Before one of my fellow interns left in particular, this one being the one I used to go to Goodwill with on Fridays, we gave each other our phone numbers, and now we're talking about hanging out sometime. The next week ended up being our true last week of JT2, but we didn't do a whole lot. We helped to clean up and put movies on. On Monday, we put one on in the auditorium because that was the only full day left. And the rest of the week were all half days. And none of the graduates were there anymore. One more thing I'd like to talk about is something special I did for all my fellow interns and all the staff. I created a slideshow where I wrote a letter to each individual. It added up to a grand total of 54 people. I reviewed them with my old CST counselor, then I got help to print them out at the college. Then I presented them to everyone who was present during our week of fun. On each day, I went to a different room and called everyone up one by one to read to them and hand it to them to take home. Those who were absent that showed up the next week, I read theirs that week instead. Anyways, everyone was highly appreciative. The part I remember most was when I called one fellow intern up in particular, and she started crying as I was reading my letter to her. Overall, I like how my first year in the Job Transitioning 2 program went. I like the variety of places we got to work at, and getting to know and reconnecting with people. For my second year, our new hub will be at my old high school, where they're constructing a new personal space for us. And I hope that'll go well for us. And that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.